In the fractured, beautiful, and often violent landscape of Renaissance Italy, the concept of freedom was a rare and dangerous thing. This is the world of Rafael Sabatini's Love, At Arms, a story that begins not with a battle, but with a choice. Our protagonist is Francesco del Falco, the Count of Aquila. He is a man who possesses everything a nobleman could desire: title, wealth, and a reputation for martial prowess. However, Francesco has a fundamental distaste for the weight of a crown. When a group of conspirators approaches him with a plan to overthrow his cousin, Duke Gian Maria Sforza of Babiano, they offer Francesco a path to even greater power. They argue that Gian Maria is an incompetent and negligent ruler whose weakness is inviting the predatory Cesare Borgia to swallow their lands whole. To Francesco, however, the prospect of ruling is less an opportunity and more a form of bondage. He chooses the life of a free soldier, a man who answers to no one but his own honor, over the stifling obligations of kingship. This decision sets a chain of events in motion that will eventually pull him into the very heart of the political storms he tried to avoid. Shortly after rejecting the conspirators, Francesco is involved in a skirmish with mercenaries. He is wounded in the fighting and finds himself seeking refuge, where he meets Monna Valentina della Rovere. Valentina is the niece of the Duke of Urbino, and the connection between them is instantaneous and profound. It is the kind of romantic spark that feels destined, but in the Renaissance, destiny is often dictated by maps and marriage contracts rather than the heart. The political reality is that Gian Maria Sforza needs an alliance to protect himself from Borgia, and he intends to secure that alliance by marrying Valentina. As the wedding preparations begin, Valentina discovers the true nature of the man she is supposed to marry. Gian Maria is not just a political tool, he is a boorish, aggressive, and deeply paranoid man. Realizing that her marriage would be a prison rather than a union, Valentina decides to assert her own agency. She flees the court, seeking sanctuary in the impregnable mountain fortress of Roccaleone. She does not flee alone. Accompanying her is Romeo Gonzaga, a courtier who presents himself as her loyal protector. But Gonzaga is a man of hollow virtue. He is an opportunist who sees Valentina's flight as a way to further his own social standing, and he secretly harbors the ambition to make her his own wife by exploiting the chaos of the situation. Francesco, driven by a sense of chivalry and a growing devotion to Valentina, tracks her to the fortress. His arrival turns the situation into a volatile triangle. To Gonzaga, Francesco is nothing more than a low-born interloper, a wandering mercenary who has no business interfering in the affairs of high nobility. But as the siege of Roccaleone begins, the mask of the courtier begins to slip, and the true character of the men involved is revealed. Inside the walls of Roccaleone, Francesco is forced to step into the role of a leader, even if he claims to despise the responsibilities of command. He has to manage an unruly garrison of soldiers, including a disgraced and volatile man named Captain Nicole Fortomani. While Francesco works to fortify the defenses and maintain order, the real danger is brewing from within. Romeo Gonzaga's jealousy eventually curdles into outright treason. He realizes that he cannot win Valentina through charm or protection, so he decides to win her through destruction. He enters into a secret pact with the enemy, Duke Gian Maria. Gonzaga's plan is simple. During the Feast of Corpus Christi, he will open the castle gates and allow the Duke's troops to enter, effectively ending the siege and likely securing his own position in the new order. However, Francesco is not the only person in the fortress who is observant. He has the help of Pep, the court jester. In the rigid social hierarchy of the Renaissance, the jester is often invisible, a piece of living furniture that people speak freely around because they do not consider him a threat. Pep becomes Francesco's eyes and ears, moving through the shadows of the castle to gather the intelligence that the high-born nobles are too proud to notice. And, through Pep's reports, Francesco uncovers Gonzaga's treachery. Instead of immediately confronting the traitor, Francesco decides to use the enemy's own greed against them. He realizes that if he can use the bribe Gonzaga has been promised as bait, he can turn the garrison's loyalty toward himself and catch the invaders off guard. The climax of the story takes place on the morning of the Feast of Corpus Christi. As the religious celebrations begin, the tension is palpable. Gonzaga, acting on his part of the pact, murders a sentinel to facilitate the enemy's entry. But the betrayal is a carefully constructed trap. As the Duke's troops begin to pour through the gates, they find themselves caught in a devastating pincer movement. Francesco and his men, having used a secret passage to emerge behind the invading forces, strike with overwhelming force. The betrayal becomes a slaughter of the invaders, and the fortress is saved not by brute strength alone, but by superior strategy and psychological warfare. In the chaotic aftermath, the political landscape is reshaped. Francesco, no longer just a wandering soldier but a man who has proven his right to lead, meets with Duke Gianmaria. He presents the Duke with a stark final ultimatum: relinquish his claim to Valentina and accept the new reality, or lose the Duchy of Baviano entirely. The resolution of the conflict is not a simple victory of good over evil, but a complex realignment of power. The Duke of Urbino, seeing the writing on the wall and prioritizing the stability of his own territories over personal loyalty to his nephew, sides with Francesco. Seeing his powers stripped away and his allies deserting him, Gianmaria is reduced to a man of rage and desperation. In a final, pathetic act of violence, he murders the traitorous Gonzaga, and then, to save his throne, he agrees to marry a different niece of Urbino, a political arrangement that leaves him humiliated and alone. The story ends with Francesco and Valentina finally free to pursue their own path, heading toward a marriage that is based on choice rather than treaty. Yet, the book leaves us with the sense that the world they inhabit remains as shifting and dangerous as ever. The peace they have found is a temporary one, carved out of a landscape of constant movement and shifting loyalties. When we look at the themes Sabatini weaves through this swashbuckling narrative, several layers of meaning emerge. The most prominent is the tension between personal liberty and political duty. Francesco del Falco is a fascinating character because he rejects the very thing most men in his position would kill for: stability and inherited power. He believes that a man's worth is found in his ability to act freely, to choose his own battles and his own loyalties. This stands in direct opposition to the world of Gianmaria and the Duke of Urbino, where people are treated as pieces on a chessboard, moved by the cold requirements of statecraft. This leads us to the distinction between true nobility and false nobility. Sabatini draws a sharp line between the men who hold titles and the men who hold honor. Romeo Gonzaga and Gianmaria Sforza represent a false nobility. They have the names, the titles, and the social standing, but their actions are governed by cowardice, jealousy, and self-interest. They use the trappings of nobility to mask their lack of character. On the other hand, Francesco and Valentina represent a true nobility. Their nobility is found in their courage, their refusal to be coerced, and their commitment to a code of conduct that transcends their social rank. Even Pepper, the jester, possesses a certain nobility of spirit. He is the only character who sees the truth clearly, using his low status to serve a higher purpose. There is also a fascinating clash between chivalry and realpolitik. Much of the book feels like a romantic adventure, filled with the ideals of the knight-errant. We want Francesco to win because he is the hero of an idealized age. But Sabatini constantly reminds us that this romance is taking place in the real world of the Renaissance, a world of mercenaries, secret pacts, and calculated marriages. The love at arms of the title isn't just about romance, it's about the way love and honor are constantly being tested by the pragmatic, often treacherous, realities of politics. Francesco succeeds not just because he is a great swordsman, but because he understands how to play the political game. He uses the enemy's own treachery to win, a move that is far more pragmatic than purely chivalrous. Finally, we have the subversion of the social hierarchy through the character of Pep. In many stories of this era, the fool is merely comic relief. In Love at Arms, Pep is essential. He represents the idea that intelligence and agency are not the exclusive domains of the aristocracy. By using his low status to gather the information that the high nobles miss, he becomes the most effective intelligence agent in the story. He proves that in a world of grand gestures and loud proclamations, it is often the quietest, most overlooked person who holds the key to the truth. Ultimately, Love at Arms is a story about the struggle to remain an individual in a world that demands you be a tool. It celebrates the triumph of the strategist over the tyrant and the triumph of the human heart over the political contract. It is a fast-paced, high-stakes drama that suggests that while the maps of Europe may be drawn by kings and dukes, the actual life of a person is lived in the choices they make when the swords are drawn and the gates are being opened.